Now on BBC Two, Newsnight with Jeremy Paxman.
They face the wrath of the voters or the wrath of the markets. Which way will the Senate jump tonight? Within hours, the American Senate is expected to do what the House of Representatives refused to do 2 days ago and agree the White House plan to protect the financial system. As both contenders for the Oval Office rally around, can they convince a skeptical public?
This is what we have to do right now to prevent a crisis from turning into a catastrophe.
We talked to the French finance minister about whether Europe needs some similar bailout scheme.
James Callaghan had been Home Secretary, Foreign Secretary, Chancellor, and then Prime Minister. But thank God we swapped him for Margaret Thatcher.
The Conservative leader tries to show it's exactly the time for a novice. How long can America afford the Iraq War? We asked the US ambassador to Baghdad. And the moment at least a few viewers have been waiting for, the result of our vote on who's the greatest Prime Minister since the war.
Do you mean post-war? What about Churchill?
Well, that's right, he's there. You missed him. You want to change it then?
Join first.
Good evening. There seems to be a general feeling on Capitol Hill that the Senate will do what the House of Representatives so dramatically declined to do a couple of days ago and give a green light to the plan to rescue American financial institutions. Mind you, George Bush was confident he'd get the scheme through last time, but now it's been modified and most of the Senate aren't facing the electorate in a month or so. Richard Watson reports.
Both presidential campaigns have been overtaken by events. The prospect of financial meltdown has focused minds, and the two candidates took the issue head-on today, in advance of a crucial vote in the Senate on the $700 billion bailout bill, which could take place in under 2 hours.
If the financial rescue bill fails in Congress yet again, the present crisis will turn into a disaster.
To the Democrats and Republicans who oppose this plan, I say that step up to the plate, do what's right for the country, even if it's not popular, because the time to act is now.
The focus on the economic crisis certainly seems to have helped Senator Obama. A Time magazine poll today puts him at 50% nationally. Senator McCain trails on 43%. And there's even better news for the Democratic candidate in the battleground states. In Ohio, which proved crucial in 2004, Obama is on 50% and McCain is on 42%. In Florida, which until recently has been leaning towards the Republicans, Senator Obama has built a commanding 8-point lead. Away from the frenzy of the campaign trail in Frederick, Maryland, Main Street America doesn't feel like it's teetering on the brink of an economic collapse. Yet businesses here are already feeling the pain that the politicians warn could turn into deep recession. Steve Chaffetz runs a company which recycles electronic parts. His credit is good and his business is going well, but he understands the immediate threat from a credit squeeze.
It's a domino effect. If the cash isn't supported in the bank by deposits, there won't be any money to lend. If the bank doesn't have the confidence that they're going to get the money paid back, they're not going to lend. And companies are going to be in serious financial difficulties. They're going to either fail, or they're going to have to cut back on expansion, or they're going to have to lay people off. It could become a serious economic problem.
On Capitol Hill, at the heart of government, there were calls to push the vote through tonight.
The step we take tonight, we're confident we will be able to restore health to the economy and get the problem fixed for the American people. Now, I said yesterday we're going to fix this problem this week.
I hear across my state of New York, small businesses are struggling to find affordable loans to keep their doors open and their inventories stocked. Even larger businesses are being pushed to the breaking point.
So what's in the Senate's bailout plan? The basis of the Paulson plan remains up to $700 billion of government money to buy up some of the bad debt held by the banks. But to sweeten the pill, a package of tax cuts for the middle classes and for small businesses would be attached to the deal. And to restore confidence in the banks, the federal government would guarantee savings of $250,000 in each bank account. That's up from $100,000. Will the new plan prove any more popular with a sceptical public?
I don't know if it's going to help the little guy, but I doubt it.
To go in and just help the people that already have the money that have caused this problem in the first place, I don't think that's the right thing to do.
And it's this pressure on the politicians who have to face the voters next month that means a deal is far from assured. Jennifer Doherty, the former mayor of Frederick, is campaigning for the congressional seat in her town. She says no politician should vote for this bailout.
It seems like we're going to get rushed into another quick decision on lots of other things that are unrelated to the root problem. And if home foreclosure and bad mortgages are the root problem, why don't we just address that and let cooler heads prevail after the election? Bail out over my dead body.
Protesters were demonstrating tonight at the Senate, but inside the chamber, the Democratic presidential candidate has just taken the floor.
Understandably, people are frustrated and they're angry that Wall Street's mistakes have put their tax dollars at risk, and they should be. I'm frustrated and angry too. But while there's plenty of blame to go around, and many in Washington and Wall Street who deserve it, all of us have a responsibility to solve this crisis because it affects the financial well-being of every single American.
On Main Street, voters are hardly convinced, but financial markets around the world have reacted as if a bailout plan will be passed. There is, of course, another hurdle, Congress, and a vote there at the end of this week could be a tougher call.
Let's get the latest now from our Washington correspondent, Katty Kay. Are we right? It is going to go through tonight?
Yeah, Jeremy, it goes to the floor of the Senate in about 2 hours' time, and all the signs there from the Senate that are coming out at the moment are that it is going to pass through the Senate. All eyes will be in particular on two of those senators, John McCain and Barack Obama. They've flown back for this vote. There's really very little difference between them. They've both said they're going to vote yes for it, although it is a vote that could cost them votes, I think, in November. So they've spent the day very hard, as we heard Barack Obama there, trying to resell this whole package, not as a bailout for Wall Street, but as a rescue package for Main Street.
But it still has to get through the House of Representatives, doesn't it?
Yeah, it goes to the House of Representatives from what we hear on Friday, and I think that's where things start to get a little bit uncertain again, because all of those congressmen in the House, unlike the senators, they are all up for re-election in November, and they're hearing the kind of anger that we just heard from those people in Maryland. They simply feel they have no political cover if their constituents don't like it. They've got to go to the polls in 4 weeks' time. If their voters don't like it, they could get voted out of office if they approve this bailout. One thing that makes me think it might pass, firstly, I don't think they're going to put it to the floor unless it's going to pass. They don't want the kind of crash we saw on Monday again. And I spoke to one conservative Democrat who had voted against the bailout on Monday. She told me that she's very optimistic that it can pass again on Friday.
Katty, thank you. Well, we're joined now by Congressman Michael Burgess from Texas, who voted against the bailout plan on Monday. What's it like, Congressman, to be one of the team that stopped a deal that might have saved your country and indeed the world from financial calamity?
Well, would that it were so. The problem is there's no guarantee that this very expensive package that hands over a lot of power to individuals, quite frankly, we don't even know who they will be in a few months' time. Secretary of Treasury, in all likelihood, will not be Secretary Paulson. So to whom are we giving this authority when it goes away from the United States House? No one can tell me that. Is it really necessary to do a package that is the whole $700 billion? I'm not convinced that it is. If we needed to pass something, perhaps we could scale that number down and come back and revisit it, depending upon the success or failure of the package as it's been proposed.
From what we know of the package, forgive me for interrupting you.
Here's an enormous concept. Yeah,
it's a big concept, but forgive me. From what we know of what the Senate is being asked to vote upon, if that comes back to the House of Representatives, is it sufficiently changed for you then to vote for it?
Well, I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know whether we'll be able to further modify and further improve. So I'm not going to tell you definitely one way or the other. Obviously, I voted no last time, and I'd probably lean in that direction today if someone were to ask me where I'm headed with this. But the reality is it's such a big concept. We've had it floated out to the American people and to the Congress in a very short period of time. Some people say financial Armageddon right around the corner. Other people say not so much. So it's been a difficult process for me with the information that I have available to sort through this, and I can just imagine that it's very difficult for my constituents at home. Yeah, we are the House of Representatives. We're the closest contact with the people, and for that reason, many of us feel a very keen obligation to make certain that we understand what we're voting on prior to casting that vote on Friday or Saturday.
And what are your constituents saying to you about how you voted?
They're saying, we love you, don't do it. Don't vote for this thing. And I hear it over and over and over again everywhere I go. So it's enormously unpopular here at home. And bear in mind, the United States House of Representatives right now, under the Democratic leadership, has about a 9% approval rating here at home. So we're not talking about dealing with a lot of political capital to begin with. And then to vote on something that is opposed by 60, 70, 80% of the population at large, it's a very, very difficult stretch. We needed to do a much better job about educating people what was going on and why this was necessary, and we didn't do it. So I don't think we have I just don't think we have the political strength to come forward with a $700 billion plan that devolves a lot of power from the United States House of Representatives to 4 cabinet secretaries or 2 cabinet secretaries and an agency head. We just don't have that kind of political capital to spend at this point. I think, and I will say this, we have come a long way since a week ago, and to that I credit the leaders on my side. I credit Senator McCain. Last Thursday, he said, wait a minute, not so fast. We got to listen to House Republicans on this. We can't just blow by them on our zeal to get this deal done. And for that reason, I think, through the weekend last weekend, and even through the week here, we've seen some improvements to the plan as it's come forward. You saw the increase in the insurance that the FDIC is going to offer. That wasn't on the table a week ago. It's there only because House Republicans stood up for what was right.
Congressman, thank you very much for sparing the time to join us. Well, however much trouble the White House might be having getting its rescue plan for the banking system through the American legislature, it has at least got a plan. Individual European countries have taken steps to protect their financial institutions, but thus far there has been no concerted action from the European Union. There were reports earlier today that the French government was going to suggest a €300 billion rescue mechanism, but this evening the French Finance Ministry denied those reports. Joining us now from Paris is the French Finance Minister, Christine Lagarde. Christine Lagarde, do you think the European Union needs something like the American bailout plan?
Well, bonsoir, first of all.
Bonsoir to you too.
I certainly believe that Europe and the US have to benefit from the same level playing field. And I think there is one key issue in that regard, and that has to do not with the fund, but it has to do with accounting rules. And I really believe that we need to make progress towards a level playing field when it comes to accounting rules and when it comes to recording what is in the balance sheets of banks. And this is not currently the case at the moment. As far as a fund, a plan for a fund is concerned, there is no such a thing.
Do you think there should be such a thing?
No, I'm saying that there is no such a thing.
I'm asking you whether there should be such a thing.
Oh, you know, I've been involved in the 2 rescue plans, if you want to call them that way, of respectively Fortis and Dexia, which both involved several European countries. And I believe that we had a very decent level of coordination and a very decent level of cross-sharing of information. Having said that, I really believe that we need to improve that. We need to improve the way we escalate incidents of that nature so that there is a good sharing of information and that decisions that are made in one country dealing with particular situations are known to other countries, and that all consequences of such measures are taken into account so that, again, you know, each and everyone in Europe can actually anticipate what is happening in any of the member states.
Let me give you one concrete example. Take the case of Ireland, which has now guaranteed all deposits. There are many people saying that is a flagrant breach of European competition rules. What's France's position on that?
It is certainly a matter that needs to be discussed at a broader level. And you're right, and that's exactly the example I was giving you. A measure decided in one member state has to be shared in advance with other member states, because when something happens in one member state, it affects everybody else around. So there needs to be that level of cross-sharing of information, anticipation of decisions, and sometimes we need to make those decisions extremely quickly, so we need to have the process in place. I think that in terms of process, in terms of coordination, in terms of level playing field, we can make progress. There's no question about that.
The German finance minister was talking about a problem that was intrinsic to Anglo-Saxon capitalism as he saw it. Your own president, Mr. Sarkozy, has talked about a crazy financial system. What are the sort of lines you're thinking along about reforming it? You're talking about overarching mechanisms, but what are they?
Well, point number one, this level playing field when it comes to accounting rules. That's one. Number two, I think that there are areas in the financial system that needs additional supervision, additional surveillance, and certainly some regulations. Hedge funds, for instance, need to be included in the system and need to be subject to the same kind of surveillance and to the same type of supervisions as investment banks, should they exist, or as banks. That's another thing. Rating agencies, which have clearly played a role in the financial crisis that we are in now, need to be regulated. They need to comply with the rules that they have assigned to themselves, as well as to the rules that we in the public interest think they should respect. Those are three examples of areas where clearly there needs to be better discipline, more measure, and more reason.
But you need a body, an international body, to enforce those standards, don't you? What is it?
If you knew the number of international bodies that are involved in all those processes, there are plenty. The thing is that you need to have the right level of coordination, and at one point in time, people who say, this is the way it goes, this is the way it has to be respected, and sanctions have to be taken so that implementation of the rules, execution of the decisions are actually completed.
Christine Legrand, thank you very much. Bonne nuit.
Bonne nuit.
Now, the chaos in the financial markets forced David Cameron to rewrite his speech to the last day of the Conservative Party conference today. The turmoil seems to have redounded to Gordon Brown's advantage, if polling evidence is to be believed. The Conservative leader said he had no miracle cure, but he did have a plan, he claimed. David Grossman watched his performance.
The slogan for this conference, Plan for Change, might more aptly have read, change of plan, because the events outside have moved so fast that organisers have had to be quick with their own changes to timing and tone. In such circumstances, a leader needs to be quick on his feet. David Cameron was out early this morning. The question is he fit to lead?
How hard a speech are you going to give?
I'm looking forward to it.
At a more sedate pace and now in more formal attire, David Cameron walked onto the stage of Symphony Hall, Birmingham. Unlike previous years, he had an actual paper speech to read from, an actual lectern to stand at. Straight away, though, he began addressing that central question, whether or not he's up to being Britain's leader.
Now, you cannot prove you are ready to be Prime Minister. It would be arrogant to pretend you can. The best you can do is tell people who you are, the way you work, how you make decisions, and then how you live with them.
No time for a novice was how Gordon Brown dismissed David Cameron last week. Conservative leaders retort, character often matters more than experience, especially when times are hard.
A good government thinks for the long term, and if we win, we will inherit a huge deficit and an economy in a mess. We will need to do difficult and unpopular things for the long-term good of our country. I know that, and I am ready for that.
Mr Cameron was in essence telling his party that they may have to stomach tax rises if that's what it takes to sort out the public finances. And as for Gordon Brown's experience, Mr Cameron said that that had simply led him down the wrong economic road, with taxes and debt far too high. The risk, he said, was in not making a change.
Just think about it. If we really listened to this argument about experience, we would never change a government, ever. We would have, wait for it, we'd have Gordon Brown as Prime Minister forever. I'm not going to go on. There are people in balconies up there.
That was only one of a couple of jokes. What Labour had done to the country, he implied, was no laughing matter. They had, he said, treated people like children. The health and safety human rights culture has infected every aspect of life. Some argue that the current economic crisis shows that the state needs an even bigger role. Not, though, David Cameron.
When times are tough, it's not a bigger state we need, it's better, more efficient government. But even more important than that, we need a stronger society. And that means trusting people and sharing responsibility with them.
The Conservative leader finished by telling his party that now they had changed, they could set about changing the country.
I believe we now have the opportunity. More than that, we have the responsibility to bring our country together. Together in the face of this financial crisis. Together in the determination that we will find a way through. Together in the hope, in the belief, in the knowledge that better times will lie ahead. Thank you.
The central message of this David Cameron speech can be boiled down to this. Only his party has the principles, only he has the judgment and the character to make the changes that Britain needs. Interestingly, though, this was not a leader putting his party on an election footing. Although he obviously wants to be Prime Minister, it's clear he doesn't expect to get the opportunity anytime soon. What did you make of that?
It was a very good speech. I think the best conference speech he's given, really a cracking performance. And what I liked about it, as somebody who knows him well, and knowing that the country doesn't always see every side of him, is that it showed what he's really like.
You used to write speeches for Tony Blair. How would you assess that?
Well, I think I've probably written that very speech myself. I mean, if you take out the references to the armed forces and all the Tory clap lines and put Labour clap lines into them, the basic thing was the same, which is get the conference to clap things they don't really believe. You have two speeches, one for the hall and one for the country. I thought it was very, very effectively done.
Now the question is, does the country notice what was said in the hall? Never before has David Cameron had to deliver a speech with so many other demands on the nation's attention. This has been an internationally momentous week, when at times the Conservative conference has felt all too irrelevant. There is at least some relief in party circles that it's all over.
Well, our political editor, Michael Crick, is with us now. What did you think of the speech?
Well, one of Mr Cameron's close advisors said it did the job, and I suppose that's about right. I'm pretty harsh on these things generally. But I think the important speech this week actually was the one he made yesterday, where he set the right tone, he was sombre, he looked like a Prime Minister in waiting. Today I gave him, 7 out of 10 when I gave Brown 7.5 last week. I think he dealt very effectively with the novice jibe, comparing, going back to the situation in 1979 when Callaghan was, of course, the experienced Prime Minister, and saying, look, we would never have had Margaret Thatcher.
Hubristic or dangerous to compare himself with Margaret Thatcher?
It is indeed, and indeed, as we may see later in the programme, for something we're going to be talking about then. He also was very good, I think, in expounding his social philosophy at the expense of David Miliband, but perhaps most important was that he was preparing, softening up in a way, the party for the possibility that if they are elected, there will be a huge budget deficit, and this will mean pretty serious spending cuts, and by implication, not tax cuts, but tax rises. And of course, that is not the sort of thing that Conservative activists normally want to sit here, but that was by implication in what he was saying, and that is acknowledged.
Michael, thanks very much. We'll see you later in the programme, and later also we'll discuss how politics has changed since the global economic crisis of recent weeks with our panel. Now, the government of Iraq acquired a new security force today. They're taking over responsibility for and paying for 100,000 people, many of whom used to be insurgents. But the Sawa, or awakening movement, isn't going to be any replacement anytime soon for the US military, which is still deployed there in very large numbers. Its mandate from the United Nations runs out at the end of the year, which means that somehow or other, either through the UN or by agreement with the Iraqi government, the United States needs to find legal cover for its presence there. In a moment, I'll be speaking to the American ambassador negotiating that deal. First, here's Mark Urban reporting.
The security situation on the streets of Baghdad is dramatically better than 1 year ago. In many areas, the Sunni insurgency is all but over, and greetings have replaced roadside bombs. Local people here say the Sunni insurgency conceded defeat.
The mentality of the people and the way they think has changed tremendously since December. And the attitude, you can see it has differed a lot. They could see what's right now, clear, and what's wrong.
On the 31st of December, UN Security Council Resolution 1723 will expire, and with it the coalition's legal basis to operate in Iraq. The US has been trying to negotiate 2 new treaties. These would ease American forces out of their combat role, cut their numbers, and regulate their future position. But Iran would rather send them packing.
America's empire in the world is reaching the end of its road. Its next leaders must limit their interference to their own borders.
While Iraq remains a key issue in the American presidential debate, US commanders worry about Senator Obama's fixed timetable for withdrawal, not least because they believe Iran may use its influence to block the treaty with the US or to stir up violence from Iraqi Shia militia groups.
I think everyone in Iraq shares certain concerns. The people on the street, coalition, Iraqi leaders, they're all keenly aware of these, again, storm cloud issues that are out there looming on the horizon and that could materialize into very serious problems if they're not dealt with properly.
The future American presence in Iraq stands at a crossroads, with the treaty talks, presidential elections, and Iranian influence all bringing matters to a head in the coming weeks.
Well, earlier today, I spoke to the American ambassador in Baghdad, Ryan Crocker. I asked him how he viewed the proposal by Barack Obama, currently leading Senator McCain in the polls, to bring US troops home in only 16 months.
It's, I think, important not to be focused on the calendar and instead to be concentrating on conditions. I think it is important to have goals. Clearly, all of us want to see a process move forward in which coalition forces steadily decline and Iraqi forces steadily assume more and more responsibility.
Clearly, there'll be American troops in Iraq on a training mission for some years to come, but does the United States seek any permanent military presence beyond that?
We absolutely do not seek permanent military bases in Iraq. We don't want them. Iraq does not want them. There's no need for them. Our relationship with Iraq will be an evolving one. Over the long term, we will work out with the Iraqis what's appropriate in terms of roles and presence.
Can you imagine American troops or contractors being subject to Iraqi law?
Well, again, there's an overall dynamic in this negotiation, and it's negotiation, again, between two partners, Iraq and the U.S. We're approaching this in a cooperative spirit. So, you know, it takes some work. There are some challenges here, but it's finding, you know, the right way forward.
Come on, Ambassador, you know what the bottom line is.
Well, the bottom line is what negotiators arrive at the conclusion of a satisfactorily negotiated agreement. We've made a lot of progress, but we are not to the bottom line yet, and until we are, these negotiations continue.
The current cost of the Iraq war is reckoned to be around $700 billion, isn't it, Ambassador? Which is about what George Bush wants to save the Western world's financial system. Do you think it's been money well spent in Iraq?
I think one has to look at where we are now and what the way forward is. History will make its own judgments, but I think right now, after 5.5 years, we would all have to very carefully weigh the costs of alternative courses of action. If we decide we don't want to do this anymore, it's too hard, it's too expensive, we have other things to worry about, we have to consider where that may lead. Because, as I said before, Iraq is not a movie that we can just decide we're tired of it, turn on the lights and go on to something else. This movie is going to go forward with the engagement of the international community or without it.
Might have been better not to have gone into the movie in the first place, mightn't it?
Well, that's, again, something the historians can work out. I'm the guy here on the ground now. My responsibility is making the assessments and trying to provide ways forward that will lead Iraq and indeed the region and the international community to a position of stability and security.
Well, now coming up on the programme, the eagerly anticipated results of our Place That Face vote. Before that, though, a roundup of today's news. Our main story tonight: the Senate will vote later this evening on a new bailout package designed to help the global banking crisis. As was discussed with the French finance minister earlier, the European Union has questioned a decision by the Irish government to guarantee all the country's bank deposits for 2 years. There's concern this could give Irish banks an unfair advantage over foreign competitors. A survey suggests that output from manufacturing in Britain shrank last month at the fastest rate for nearly 17 years. New orders from abroad fell and domestic demand was particularly weak, with customers cancelling orders. A regular survey by the Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply registered unprecedented falls in levels of output, new orders and employments. The markets, the FTSE 100 share index was up 57, including a rise in HBOS Bank shares by 21%, while in New York the Dow Jones closed down. Against the euro, the pound was up slightly. Against the dollar, the pound was down. Well, let's return now to British domestic politics. David Cameron's speech today brought the party conference season to a close. In that time, the mood of the nation has changed profoundly as we've watched the financial system eat itself. We'll be talking that through with our panel in a moment or two. First, though, Michael Crick has the final verdict in Place That Face on who was the best post-war Prime Minister. Well, actually, first he has the verdict on Tory leaders.
We got 39 experts from the Political Studies Association to give us their rankings of Tory leaders since the Second World War. Churchill came top, then Thatcher, then Macmillan, and David Cameron fourth. Bottom of the 11, Ian Duncan Smith. Well, today here in Birmingham, we got Tory activists to play Place That Face. Mr. Pickles. Hello. You must come and play our Place That Face. Now, Mr. Osborne, are you going to come and play our game, Place That Face?
No.
You're thinking about Cameron.
I think we'll put him in because
we're putting him at 2,
I'm loyal.
Right, that should keep you your job. Might even get a better one on the basis of that. So, Churchill number 2?
Yeah, great peacetime leader, great wartime leader.
We can see that he is capable of being Prime Minister. For all we know, one day he might be up there.
Aren't you supposed to say David Cameron?
I'm not getting into your game. It's easier to deal with some of the less good ones as well, isn't it?
I have to admit, I'm not Ted's biggest fan.
Why not?
I just think that he just didn't quite get it right. Sorry, mate.
I think Ted probably tried his best but caused more trouble than it was worth, and the long sulk was unnecessary and unforgivable, don't you think?
Would you like to come and Place That Face?
No.
This is Sir Reginald Sheffield, Samantha Cameron's dad. I'd like to put your son-in-law first.
No. Oh, here we go. Because I like William.
Right.
And this is Yorkshireman.
Right.
Therefore, by the natural, he sort of inherited the earth.
He looks a bit like you as well, doesn't he?
No, I'm a sort of the larger version, but there is a certain resemblance.
Today's results, well, Conservative activists narrowly had Margaret Thatcher top of the pile, followed by Winston Churchill, and then someone called David Cameron. Bottom of the list, the man who took Britain into Europe, Edward Heath.
Well, now the moment so many people have been waiting for. We've had more than 25,000 votes. It's been more eagerly anticipated than the final vote in the X Factor, or indeed the delivery of that pizza you ordered 2 hours ago. It's the outcome of Strictly Come Dancing, or Strictly Come Governing, or Place That Face. How does it work, Michael?
Well, we've brought the Place That Face board quickly down to London, and we asked Newsnight viewers through the website to place post-war prime ministers, the 12 of them, 1 to 12. Now, I have to stress, this was not a scientific opinion poll. It is purely a piece of fun. Now, of course, the other thing is it's possible for people to have voted more than once, but you'd have to be pretty sad to do that on a large scale.
And those all-important results, Michael.
Right, well, in the middle, Harold Macmillan in 4th position. I should stress these dates, by the way, refer to their period as party leader, not as Prime Minister. Followed number 5, Harold Wilson. Number 6, just above halfway, Tony Blair. Ted Heath, 7. John Major, 8. Jim Callaghan, 9. And Alec Douglas-Hume in 10, which leaves 4 men and 1 woman vying for the top 3 positions and the bottom 2. So who is it to be at the top? Well, in 3rd, we have Margaret Thatcher. Interestingly, she actually got the most first preferences, more than anybody else. But at the same time, a lot of people didn't rate her at all as Prime Minister, something that David Cameron might like to think about. Indeed, she got the 2nd highest number of last preferences. So who was 2nd of these 4? It was Clement Attlee, the post-war Labour leader, and at number 1, regarded by Newsnight viewers as the greatest post-war Prime Minister, was Sir Winston Churchill. Now, this was a survey of post-war Prime Ministers, and I suspect that Churchill did pick up a bit of support because of his wartime premiership, which most people regard as a lot more distinguished than his premiership in the 1950s. That leaves us with Anthony Eden and Gordon Brown, both premiers who had to wait a long time for their predecessors, waited rather impatiently for them to retire. Anthony Eden, of course, of the Suez Crisis. Gordon Brown has had a number of crises of his own. Which one comes bottom? The answer, Gordon Brown, who, believe it or not, nearly half of the entries in this survey placed him in bottom position, leaving Anthony Eden at number 11.
Fascinating, Jeremy. Michael. Thank you very much. Well, we're joined now by our political panel. You can make of that particularly unscientific survey what you like. Danny Finkelstein is here from The Times, formerly of Central Office. Peter Hyman, former strategist for Tony Blair. Ollie Grender, the former Liberal Democrats communications director. Let's leave that nonsense behind for a moment or two and talk about what's happened. This has been a rather interesting, some rather dull conferences, I think, but you may have different views. But an interesting conference season, completely different at the end to the beginning. And am I right in thinking that the one thing that's really emerged is change and continuity? That seems to be right across, yeah?
Well, change and continuity was always going to be the question at the election, and previously it seemed absolutely obvious that change would be the trump card over experience. During this small period of crisis, I think experience looks a bit more of a winner than it did. In the end, in my view, change is still a better card than experience.
But the line of the conference season undoubtedly was the novice line. I mean, you saw today...
Yeah, it was. It
was the line that shaped everything, wasn't it? Yes. Today, Cameron was on the defensive for the first time in a year, and he hasn't got a lot to worry about yet, but he was, if you like, playing away from home for the first time in a year, where he had to talk about the novice charge and try and get rid of that. He had to talk about the economy when he wanted to talk about the broken society.
society. He had to even attack fat cats, which isn't natural Tory territory. So he was not on the grounds that he wanted to be, and that was to the credit of Gordon Brown. Gordon Brown surprised people at the conference season.
Though, do you really think that? Do you think that the novice line, though it was brilliant at this moment, is you're not going to have an election in a crisis, but in the aftermath of a crisis? Now Gordon Brown is really tying himself to experience rather than change. Don't you really think strategically Labour needed to be with
But he needed to turn around the conference season, and he needed to grasp onto something, and this was the way to do it. So I mean, I think it was right to go for the novice line.
Well, the strange thing is, if the economic downturn continues, that's going to be good for Gordon. If they get out of it, even if he gets credit for getting out of it, they'll start looking for someone else and something more optimistic, and then turn to Cameron.
In those circumstances, change is always going to beat continuity.
I mean, there's that great song, You Are So Beautiful, and then it finishes To Me. And I always think that spoils the romance of the line. And when people said this conference season that Gordon Brown made a very good speech, they always finish for Gordon Brown in rather the same way.
No,
so
I think someone was saying that about Cameron's speech today. It was a rather good speech for Cameron.
Well, I mean, you can take the view. Everyone takes their own view, and I saw quite a wide range of views. Actually, some people really liked it, some people didn't. Strategically, I thought he was on the right grounds. It appealed to me, but I would say that I thought he was on the right grounds, talking about change.
I think it's fascinating that you say he was on the right ground, because I thought what I read was that he went back to core vote. With quite a lot of the lines and messaging that he was using. And I think the same applied to Gordon Brown, interestingly enough. I thought it was two party leaders who went a little bit back in terms of comfort zone.
Well, I think the problem for Cameron is he was the least strategic of the three. I think Clegg wanted to move the Lib Dem party, and to a certain extent did. Gordon Brown's strategy was to survive, and he did more than that. Cameron's strategy was, because he was so far ahead, actually slightly unknown. So his speech today was a bit of a mishmash. He ended with a man with a plan, the ultimate cliche, but then didn't give us a plan. So it was, in that sense, a slightly fatuous speech.
I obviously take this differently, but I kind of agree with you that both Gordon Brown's speech and Nick Clegg's were strategic. Unfortunately, I think in both cases they were the wrong strategy. I think, as we've said before...
the strategy of surviving was quite a good one for Gordon.
I think I'm not necessarily thinking it was a good thing for the Labour Party.
Do you think that on the basis of where we are now, Gordon Brown can win the next election? Because we're not having the next election now, are we? Can he win it?
Well, I think there's a glimmer of a hope in the way that there wasn't. Right. I don't think Cameron's got a lot to worry about yet, but I think, as I said before, if the economic continues to be a big problem, I think Gordon is looking stronger on that and will continue to look stronger than Cameron. I think Cameron today he doesn't do serious well, put it that way. Well, he actually is good at the gimmickry, and he's good at the lighter stuff. I'm not sure he looked good as a serious leader today.
I think we've moved into a place where this is Cameron's election to lose. And so, this is why today was so important, because what he needs to do is move that dial. And I know the dials look different everywhere, and it'll be interesting to see how the polling comes out. But what he really needs to do is move to a position where people have a much stronger view about him. And my understanding is that still the polling is saying that the jury is slightly out on Cameron, and it needs to move. And today was a good time for him to move that.
It's more out on the party.
And whether Thatcher, using the incantation of Thatcher, moves that, because I think she's like Marmite, you kind of love her or hate her. And I don't know whether she moves his target voters.
What about your boy, though, Nick Clegg? I mean, he was the only one who was talking about tax cuts.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I thought it was a bizarre phrase that David Cameron used, which is, this is what drives me in the job, to lower tax. But he didn't say what for, to achieve what. So, yeah, I mean, Nick was the only one talking about tax cuts, and I thought that was a very interesting move for the party.
Some would say eccentric.
Well, I think Nick Clegg's proving an absolutely brilliant leader to do triumphantly well at the 2005 general election. And I think this was another example of that. This, incidentally, the policy that he's picked up is almost exactly the policy on which the Conservative Party lost 2 general elections, for precisely the reason that Nick Clegg is now discovering, which is if you set budgets in 2014 based on conditions in 2008, you are going to make a terrible mistake. And he has made a mistake by offering tax cuts about 2 weeks precisely before such an offer appeared ridiculous. So that's why I say he was strategic, and I was quite impressed by the verve that he showed. I think he's plump for absolutely
But
the
you
wrong
won't agree
thing.
with this, just to get back to Cameron. There is something very hollow. You see, there's someone who knows, obviously, because I was involved in them, a lot of Tony Blair's speech. There's such an element of pastiche about Cameron. He's rehashing a lot of the sound bites, some of which were even tired when we used them in 1997. I mean, to end the something for nothing society. How often have we heard that over the last 10 years? I mean, it seems that this is an artifice that has no core. Tony talked about the irreducible core. I don't find Cameron believable
I'm
in
heartbroken
any way.
to discover that you regarded those lines as cliches, and now you tell us. I was sitting there all agog at the time. I don't accept that critique. Actually,
No,
I thought there was a real core to the speech. I thought there was a real argument, and I think the relationship that he drew between social responsibility and economic responsibility was a good one. I think the debt issue actually is good for the Conservatives. I kind of agree that if you were to make a criticism of it, that the retro feel of some of it was probably out of keeping with the modernising argument. But I think there is a time and a place
for families
that too.
and the strong argument about marriage. I thought that was interesting. I thought the kind of implied attack on human rights, which was bizarre, which I understand was a kind of wording error, and the kind of lack of environment, which was his driving passion at the beginning.
Briefly, we've very little time left. This bipartisanship, tripartisanship, is this going to last?
Well, bipartisanship was a brilliant partisan strategy, is the way I put it. I thought that David Cameron's bipartisan move yesterday was clever, was probably the best thing in the conference season.
What about you guys? Do you think it's going to last?
No. No, but I think what has been useful for the Lib Dems is normally, by the time of this story, because I was Director of Comms on Black Wednesday when it was Lib Dem conference, so, you know, this is kind of etched in my memory, is the fact that by now the Lib Dems normally would have disappeared off the face of the earth, and because of Vince Cable, because he's been right on so many things for so long, actually the Lib Dems are remaining with a voice, a share of voice in this issue.
Would it be cheap to say it's always Black Wednesday when it's the Liberal conference, at least?
Yes, that would be very cheap.
Thank you all very much. Let's have a quick gander at tomorrow morning's front pages now. The Financial Times, I think we got first off. Yeah, Europe split on bank fund. That story we were talking about earlier with the French finance minister. The Guardian, savers in stampede to safety. The Daily Mail, Met boss in new cash for a friend storm. And the front page of the Daily Telegraph has more news or bad news about the financial market. That's it for tonight. You can see the full results of that very exciting Place That Face competition on our website, including the choice of distinguished academics. Gavin will be here tomorrow, but until then, good night.
Evening.